I will keep it short and with as few details as possible to avoid being identified. My husband and I have been married for over 10 years. The last several years have been very, very difficult for us. We have been trying to conceive and failing, and this has put a lot of stress on our marriage. I have been very vocal and public about our fertility struggles offline and online. After many rounds of in vitro fertilization, I finally became pregnant, and I am currently in my second trimester. From the beginning, the pregnancy has been really rough on me. I have had severe morning sickness, high blood pressure, and my pregnancy was considered high risk. Our marriage has been under a lot of stress, and this is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had intimate relations once since I got pregnant, largely because I feel completely miserable most days. Earlier today, my husband's phone kept pinging with notifications. I instinctively picked it up to see who was messaging him. The messages were from a female friend of his. She is a relatively new friend. From what I briefly saw before he walked into the house, he had been taking out the garbage and snatched the phone from my hands. It seemed he had been complaining about me and our intimacy life to this friend. I confronted him and asked him to open the message so I could read what he had been saying about me. He got really angry and pushed me hard when I tried to take the phone back from him, and I fell on the floor. He immediately apologized and helped me get back up, and I could tell he felt really bad. When I again tried to ask him about the message, he still wouldn't show me the phone, kept deflecting, saying it was nothing, and that he was just complaining to a friend that the pregnancy had been difficult, and that was all. I am not convinced. The texts that I saw briefly were more than what he was letting on. He refused to show me his phone for proof on the grounds of, we need to have trust. I know he doesn't come across that way in this post, but he really is a good, loving, and supportive husband. He has never laid a hand on me, but I can't deny the uneasy feeling I have following his actions. To add, reading all your comments is making me rethink the severity of his actions. Don't get me wrong, I knew it was very wrong, and it was one of the reasons I turned to Reddit for advice. What do I do now? He is very protective and possessive of me and the pregnancy. What if he doesn't like it if I leave? Would my baby and I be in danger? I almost forgot. Thank you all for the comments. You have opened my eyes to a lot of his behavior, which I didn't consider to be an issue before. I wanted to go in for a checkup yesterday after the fall, but he said it wasn't necessary because the fall wasn't too hard and told me not to worry. But I will go to the hospital for a checkup when he's out of the house today. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. The man got physically violent with his very pregnant wife. I think you are glossing over the biggest issue here. Like, what could he possibly have on his phone that is worth pushing his pregnant wife to the floor over? He's being shady, and there is no excuse for violence. Period. Comment 2. Ma'am, he was so worried about you seeing what he was saying that he pushed his high-risk pregnancy wife onto the floor. Please don't minimize this with, he's such an amazing, loving husband. He was willing to risk ending the life of your baby to prevent you from seeing those messages. Now for the update. The day after I confronted my husband, I went to my doc for a checkup. It was for the fall I had when he pushed me. Yeah, things have gotten that bad. Anyway, the doc was super worried about my high blood pressure and basically told me to chill more because my body is dealing with enough stress as it is. She asked me how I hurt myself, and I kind of framed it as just me tripping over my own feet. She knows I have a bad knee, so she didn't ask further. I mentioned my husband's been acting weird, like really weird, but I said it was probably just stress from the pregnancy and work. She looked at me and said, I should think about having a support system outside my marriage. That comment hit harder than I expected, but I just nodded and said I'd think about it. After the appointment, I felt like I needed to clear my head, so I took a walk. I passed this local coffee shop, and guess who I saw? My husband, sitting inside with that female friend from the messages. Of course, I didn't walk in all dramatic. I decided to be a creep and listen in before confronting him. The friend was all up in his space, whispering something that made him laugh. I wanted to throw up. I noticed her husband's phone on the table buzzing like crazy. I leaned in closer, trying to be all sneaky to catch a glimpse of the screen. Then I saw a text that read, "I can't wait to see you again. It's been too long." Yeah, it felt like a punch to the gut. I quietly walked out of there, holding myself together, but feeling like I was about to lose it. At home, I began planning my next steps. I reached out to a colleague at work who I knew I could trust and asked to meet for lunch to discuss my situation. During lunch, she told me this story about someone who found out their partner was cheating. I was all ears, taking notes on how that person handled their situation. My colleague had no idea how relevant her story was to me. The following weekend, I had to attend a family gathering for my sister-in-law's birthday. I was dreading it because I knew my husband would be there. He was acting so distant, like more than usual, spending more time on his phone than actually interacting with family. It was obvious he was texting the same friend, and it just intensified all my suspicions. After the party, I confronted him about it, but he brushed it off like it was no big deal. I realized I needed to gather some solid evidence of his cheating instead of confronting him directly. So I started keeping a record of his late nights and all the odd excuses he made. One evening, I noticed he had left his phone unattended while showering. It was like a sign from the universe. I quickly grabbed it and took screenshots of the messages between him and that friend. The texts were flirty and intimate, confirming all my worst fears. I felt sick, but also kinda relieved to have proof. The next day, I planned a surprise dinner for my husband, pretending like everything was just fine. During dinner, I brought up our relationship and his recent behavior. He seemed uneasy, shifting in his seat and avoiding eye contact like a kid caught stealing cookies. Finally, I revealed the screenshots, watching his face drain of color. He tried to deny it, claiming it was just harmless fun. Yeah, right. I told him I was staying with my sister for a bit. He begged me to stay, but I was done. After moving in with my sister, I started focusing on myself and preparing for the baby. I connected with a local support group for expectant mothers, and it felt so good to find a community of people who understood what I was going through. Eventually, I decided to file for separation. The final straw came when my husband showed up at my sister's place unannounced. He tried to apologize, but I stood firm and told him it was over. I made plans for a fresh start, focusing on my health and the baby. Edit. After my husband left my sister's place, things calmed down a bit. We talked a few times about the logistics of my moving out, and he seemed more cooperative. He even agreed to help with the costs of my sister's place, which I appreciated. As for the baby, I started attending prenatal classes with a group from the support network. It felt great to connect with others going through similar experiences. I'm just focusing on a positive environment for my child and myself. Am I the idiot for calling out my sister's boyfriend for his abusive behavior towards my niece and being shut out of the family? My wife and I came back to my hometown for the weekend for what we were told was a late birthday party for my niece, since the one scheduled on her actual birthday was canceled because of the hurricane. When we got to this 3-year-old's party, there were only 2 kids besides my niece. All the adults were drinking, and it seemed like the whole purpose of the party was for my sister to convince her loved ones that this guy who she hasn't even been with for 2 months but is already living with wasn't so bad, when all he wanted to do was drink, watch the game, and brag about how he used to be in the army. Mind you, he left as an E4. If he even spoke to you at all. This is all happening after a falling out my sister had with my grandpa after she took said boyfriend over to his house to introduce him, and he made him butt of himself by walking in with a beer and trying to argue about politics. We walked in knowing about the falling out, but trying to stay neutral and maybe get my sister's side of the story. She lied and said that she couldn't deal with my grandpa anymore because he said something discriminatory along the lines of, "You colored people all vote the same." There were other people present, including my mom and my brother, who confirmed that didn't happen. Going back to the birthday party, my wife and I were out in the backyard while he was grilling with my sister, and my niece ran up to my sister crying. She was ready for cake, and she didn't want to play anymore. I was playing cornhole on the side with my other relatives, but my wife saw this grown man walk up to my niece yell at her to stop crying, and grab her hand and slap it. He looked back at my sister and said she had her hand in her mouth again. My sister proceeded to tell my wife that it's hard being a mother figure and a father figure at the same time, and it's nice to have him do that for her. Then the boyfriend started bragging to my wife about how he has a house of discipline and that he's not shy to discipline my niece or his 2 daughters, who are close in age, in private or in front of people. My sister just agreed and also started making excuses for this guy, including saying he has to drink because of his anxiety, and that's why he showed up at my grandpa's drunk. At this point, you may be wondering, what about the dad? He is a grown man in his ID-20s male who lives with his parents who want custody of my niece. After hearing that my sister gave permission to a random guy to hit her 3-year-old daughter, I think it would be better to tell the father what's going on or try to get through to my sister about her behavior. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Holy smokes. Tell the father and fill out a statement. If anyone else has seen this, have them fill one out too. He is an hurtful drunk and will eventually go too far with one of the children. I would also give Child Protective Services a heads up about his own daughters and the mother too. Better safe than sorry. Comment 2. Please tell the father. My country had a few significant cases of small children passing away after step-parents abused them. Don't let your niece become your country's big case. Tell the father. Now for the update. 2 weeks after the birthday party, my sister invited my wife and me over for dinner to talk about family stuff. I was unsure but agreed, hoping to deal with the concerns about the boyfriend's behavior toward my niece. When we got there, the vibe was super awkward. My sister looked like she was about to lose it, but then there's the boyfriend, cracking jokes and chugging beers like he's at a frat party. Like, dude, this is not a party. This is a family intervention. Dinner started, and the convo was all about safe topics like the weather and sports, but I just couldn't ignore the obvious issue in the room, or rather the jerk in the room. So I casually mentioned how I had seen the boyfriend's discipline methods at the party. My sister jumped in, acting like a lawyer defending her client, insisting that her boyfriend was just trying to be a good role model. The boyfriend then goes on to brag about his parenting skills, saying strictness leads to better behavior. I mean, yeah, if you're trying to raise a soldier, maybe. My wife tried to be the peacemaker, suggesting we all work together for the niece's well-being, but the boyfriend got all defensive and started acting like a tough guy. He insisted that his methods were necessary and basically challenged me to a duel. I stood my ground, expressing concern for my niece's safety without directly attacking him. My sister, though, totally sided with her boyfriend, saying I was overreacting and judgmental. Dinner ended awkwardly, with me feeling like I was talking to a wall. After dinner, my wife suggested we leave before things got any worse. As we were leaving, the boyfriend made a snide remark about my soft parenting style. Like, sorry I'm not a drill sergeant, dude. A few days later, I got a message from my niece's biological father, asking if we could meet up to discuss some issues. I was surprised, but agreed to meet him at a local diner. During our meeting, he revealed he'd been following my niece's situation closely. Apparently, other family members had shared their concerns about the boyfriend's behavior with him. He was worried about possibly pursuing custody due to the troubling environment. After the meeting, I decided to speak with my sister again, hoping to bridge the gap. When I called, she was livid, accusing me of meddling and trying to ruin her life. I explained I was just looking out for my niece, but that only made her more furious. She told me to stay out of her business and hung up on me. Weeks passed, and I learned through family gossip that the boyfriend had a troubling past with previous relationships. Like, what the heck? Why is everyone okay with this? Eventually, the biological father contacted me again, saying he was considering legal action. When I shared this with my sister, she completely shut down, refusing to acknowledge any problems. In a last-ditch effort, I invited her to discuss things face-to-face, but she flat out declined. I found out that the boyfriend had started influencing how my niece viewed her biological father, which just made things worse. A few days later, I got a call from a family member saying my sister was planning a big family gathering. I wasn't invited, but I found out the boyfriend would be there, drinking and celebrating. As the gathering approached, the biological father reached out again, now saying he would confront the boyfriend. I honestly feel like I'm in the middle of a really messy family drama that I can't just walk away from, you know? Like, I get that my sister is in love and probably blind to a lot of what's going on, but come on, how can she not see how bad this guy is for her kid? And on top of that, her ex is thinking about custody, which could just make everything worse. I mean, I don't want to be the one tearing my sister's life apart, but her daughter's safety is at risk, and I can't just sit around doing nothing. Things are really complicated right now, but I'll definitely keep you guys updated if anything major happens. To answer a few questions, my niece's biological father is aware of her living situation and is concerned but doesn't want to escalate things without cause. He has custody rights but hasn't pursued them yet. My sister's past relationships were never problematic, which makes the family's acceptance of the boyfriend puzzling. Am I the idiot for investigating my wife's fidelity after finding a condom wrapper in her car? We have been together for about 10 years and married for 6. We have no kids now, but we were planning to start trying pretty much now. We are both very active, going to the gym, eating healthy, and are both in relatively great shape. My wife is gorgeous with a phenomenal body, but I would probably consider myself maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale. I realize that, but we have always had a really strong relationship. We started as great friends, realized we were just right for each other, and that developed into true romantic love and devotion. The intimacy was always fantastic. There were never any issues there with quality or frequency. I was washing my wife's car, as I do pretty often. In the course of cleaning the interior, I found an open, empty condom wrapper under her passenger seat. We don't use condoms since she has always been on birth control. I am driving myself insane with all the stories and scenarios running through my brain. She spends a lot of time at the gym working with weights and doing her cardio, like 3 hours, 4 days a week, so there are frequent times when we are apart. She has never given me a reason to suspect she has been unfaithful. I know I have to confront her, but I'm scared to death of what might be the truth. She is my world, and I can't imagine starting a family with anyone else. I'm afraid I'm going to break. To add, wow, you all are amazing. I am so touched by the direct messages and heartfelt responses. I had no idea I would get so many responses so quickly. I wanted to add some details to save me from having to reply to all the common comments. My wife has never given me a reason to think she has cheated before this. She has always been loving and affectionate, and we were looking forward to starting a family very soon. Some have speculated that kids coming soon may have led her to one last fling. I don't know. Possibly. We are an open book to each other, with our finances pretty much entirely tied up as one. She comes from a pretty upper middle class background. Her parents are very comfortable. I come from a home where my parents were fighting their own demons, and so I didn't get a lot of attention growing up. Not a criticism. It was easy to get lost in the shuffle of my parents' problems. We are cordial but not super close. I'm way closer to her family, and I love her mom, dad, and younger sister. Financially, we are fine. Together, we make about $150,000 per year. She makes $60,000 as a law firm assistant, and I make $90,000 as an auto technician. We own a house together that we were able to purchase with a down payment from her family. If worse comes to worst, I have no interest in fighting for that money. It is theirs, and they can have it back if we end up selling the house. Some have commented about the amount of time she is at the gym. We go to separate gyms. She gets off work at 4 and goes straight to the gym, where she does a class, then works out with weights and does cardio on the treadmill. I was never suspicious of the time she spends there. By the time she gets home, I am already there, and she jumps directly in the shower. Then we make dinner together and hang out. As far as a lawyer or an investigator, there's no way I could do that in secret with the way we manage our finances. So that's out for now. Someone explained to me how to get detailed phone records from Visible, so that's my next step. I will get the records when I have some time to myself and see if there is a number that she's in contact with, a lot that I don't recognize. I'll try to figure out where to go from there and let you all know. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Trust me when I say this, and this comes from experience. Even someone who seems like the perfect, most loving, and loyal partner can end up being a cheater. Some people just know exactly how they are supposed to behave in person, but do whatever they want for themselves the second you are out of sight or unaware. Comment 2. I found a condom in my car. We weren't using condoms. Turns out, my friend who was visiting was having an affair with an old friend who lives in the same city I do. The wrapper fell out of her pocket while she was riding in my car. It's easy to jump to conclusions, but the first impression isn't always the truth. Now, for the update, I'm sorry, but it seems like there's no text provided for me to work on. Could you please provide the text you want me to edit? Again, thank you to everyone who gave helpful advice. I'm not sure if I will be updating further, however. My mom's family is really messed up. It seems like a lot of them don't respect boundaries, and the things I found out about my mom's past, especially her teenage years, really surprised me. I'm going to focus on my own family now. I don't want my kids growing up around people like that. It's sad that I'll be cutting ties with my grandparents, uncle, aunts, and cousins, but I have to prioritize my family's safety. Edit. I found out my mom was a bully in high school and gotten into a lot of trouble with the law as a teen. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.